Welcome to episode 71 of Fascinating, a Star Trek podcast. The Mark of Gideon.
In this week's episode, Kirk is stranded alone on a replica of the Enterprise as the people of Gideon seek a way to harness the remnants of a virus in his blood to cull their population and end the curse of overpopulation. With the Enterprise crew unable to locate their captain, Spock must disobey direct orders if he is to solve the mystery. But can he succeed? Or is it Kirk's destiny to be an unwilling donor for the rest of his life?
Going to scan space for him?
But sir, that could take years.
Then the sooner you begin, the better.
Good afternoon, Ian. How are you?
I'm not too bad, Gerry. How are you?
Terrific.
As always.
Well, no, that's not accurate, is it?
You're not always terrific, that's
I'm
true.
rarely terrific.
Very rarely. As the reviews have told us.
All about opinions.
It is indeed. Everyone's got one.
Yep, mine's and wrong ones.
Indeed. This episode has more plot holes than you can shake a stick at.
It does have. However, I still think it's a more than serviceable episode.
Yeah, I thought there wasn't really much to elevate it. It was kind of meh.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's not dreadful, not fantastic, just
kind of goes along. Yeah, it'll pass 45 minutes of your time.
Mm-hmm. Probably wouldn't watch it again.
Yeah, not out of choice.
That's not the type of thing that you would... I fancy a bit of Star Trek, what will I stick on?
The Mark of Gideon. Or like you turn the channel and say, oh, the Mark of Gideon's on. Yeah.
And there's nothing particularly bad about it that would make you watch it either. It's not so bad that it's watchable.
Yeah, it doesn't. There's nothing like laughable.
Mm-hmm.
You would say, it's so ridiculous. Apart from the fact that guy's 43.
Every week.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
I suppose it's a class. It's a standard 6.5 sort of episode.
Yeah.
6.5. It's fine.
It filled a week on the schedule.
Yeah, it was all right. And another episode which it was quite obvious they had budget considerations.
Yeah, no budget.
None. What we'll do this week, we're on the exactly the same set. It's an alternative version. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
And in fairness to the plot and the story, it did touch on some larger issues. And perhaps for the 60s, maybe issues that were either topical or maybe even risque for the type of show that it was.
Sure, that's true.
Anyway, we can get to that.
Yeah, shall we get into it?
Let's crack on.
We begin with the now traditional Captain's Log.
5423.4.
Big information dump.
Go for it.
Orbiting Gideon, not a Federation planet, because they are refusing people the right to visit them, which makes it difficult to conclude a treaty. But they've finally agreed to a delegation of one, which has to be Kirk, so he is beaming down immediately.
Of course it has to be Kirk.
There can be no catch here.
Why do they only want Kirk? Have they heard about him?
Yeah, we find out later on that they have indeed researched him deeply.
Yeah, you're right. They have, yeah. The Gideons, is there any allusion here to the
Gideon Bible?
Yeah.
Don't know.
That always reminds me of Bill Hicks, his fantastic piece on the Gideons, where he doesn't know what it is. He asks, when he's travelling, goes to his hotel rooms, and he always finds these Bibles that have been left by the Gideons, and he thinks, I wonder what a Gideon is. I'm going to catch me a Gideon. I'm going to sit up at night. Like Santa.
See if one comes and puts a Bible in your drawer.
Anyway.
Transporter room. Kirk tells Spock that the report Gideon sent to the Federation makes it sound like an absolute paradise.
Yeah, so he's disappointed that he cannot come with him.
Spock then contacts Uhura, who gives confirmation that Gideon's provided clearance and coordinates for beamdown, and in the first of many times that the episode spells things out in words of one syllable, we then get the coordinates relayed in duplicate as Uhura reads them out and Spock repeats them phrase by phrase before beaming Kirk down.
Now, watching this and taking notes for the first time, I was thinking to myself, this isn't usual. Why would... we never hear this before.
Yeah, because they're not able to scan the planet, so they need specific coordinates to beam down.
That makes sense.
Kirk then dematerializes and reappears in an empty transporter room, and he's very angry at Spock.
Yeah, he's annoyed that he has left his station before he'd fully materialized or fully beamed down.
So he contacts the bridge and gets no reply, and we see an empty bridge, engineering in sickbay as Kirk tries to call round all of his senior staff.
He then looks at the screen and remarks with despair, that he is still orbiting Gideon.
And we get the credits. We get Kirk voiceover here.
Yeah, and there's some suspenseful music as he creeps around. What do we hear? When you say a voiceover, it's an inner monologue.
Indeed. He's alone on the Enterprise, having searched every area of the ship and finding no trace of the crew or an indication of how their disappearance was managed. But he is convinced he has suffered a memory lapse because he's got a massive bruise on his arm and he doesn't know how he got it.
That can be the only explanation. I get bruises all the time. I think to myself, where did that come from? Can't remember it. I don't think I must have had a memory lapse.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know where this bruise on my arm has come from. I've lost minutes out of my day.
Back on the real bridge, Uhura puts Gideon on the screen for Spock, and we are presented with a confused delegation of council leaders.
This is Mr. Spock, Ambassador Houghton. Captain Kirk was transported down minutes ago.
That's impossible.
I transported him myself.
He never arrived.
He was beamed directly to your council chambers. Please verify your coordinates.
875 020 079.
Coordinates confirmed.
We gave you the exact coordinates, which should have brought Captain Kirk directly into this very room.
I am not questioning that, sir.
If he is not here, that is your own responsibility, Mr. Spock, and that of your staff.
I do not deny that, sir. I am not attempting to blame your personnel.
We are glad to hear that. We shall have to enter it into the records of this most unfortunate event.
Your Excellency, even with intricate machinery as delicately balanced as ours, there is still a margin for error which must be dealt with. It is possible that Captain Kirk materialized on some other part of Gideon.
Let us hope it was on dry land.
Your Excellency, may I cut right to the heart of the matter? I request permission to beam down to conduct the search for our captain.
Permission denied. Your Federation must be aware of our jealous tradition of isolation from all contaminating contacts with the violent nature of planets of other star systems.
Your Excellency, the wars between opposing star systems no longer prevail in our galaxy. If you will grant permission.
Of course, we shall institute a thorough search. In the meantime, Mr. Spock, I suggest that you look to your machinery.
That reminds me of losing a parcel that's been sent, or one that I have sent. It's always better if you're the receiver. If it doesn't turn up, it's the responsibility of the sending party.
Until it arrives, yes. Spock goes on from that point to make a disparaging remark about diplomats, which leads McCoy to point out that they themselves are not diplomats and do not need to behave diplomatically.
That's true. I quite liked that remark. I think it was the purpose of diplomacy is to prolong a crisis.
Indeed.
Was that Star Trek's own line, or is that a quote from someone?
I'm not sure. It's not listed anywhere in any trivia source that I was able to see.
Okay.
Spock, of course, goes on to be a diplomat in The Next Generation, ironically.
Does he?
Yeah.
Spoiler.
If anyone's not watched it.
Like myself.
Indeed.
Spock points out that as the planet is shielded, they cannot select coordinates to beam down. I think McCoy wants them just to take some action. And they must wait for them to be provided by Gideon, or the people of Gideon themselves.
Yeah, Chekhov has a moan about accepting these restrictions, and Spock points out it was a Federation decision. That's about the most that Chekhov's had to do for weeks.
Yeah, I mean, this is another thing. I think I may have mentioned it before. From my understanding of Star Trek before working through this podcast, that these were really sort of the main. I'd heard of Chekhov and I thought he was quite a prominent character, but other than the main three, they're not really at all.
Chekhov and Sulu and Uhura have faded in this season.
Mm-hmm. But even in the other seasons, they didn't do that much.
No.
Very sort of peripheral. They could have been played by anyone, really.
Yeah. They tried to build Chekhov up initially, and then he's just been allowed to slip out of the picture. Maybe they're too expensive. I think it's too much to say.
Quite possibly, and I think with the budget constraints that we know that they had, that would make sense.
I mean, even Scotty's not up to that much.
Probably for the best.
Yeah, he's trouble.
Anyway, Spock tells Uhura to contact Starfleet and get permission to do what is required, or whatever is required, to retrieve Kirk. And then it tells Sulu to start a 360 sensor scan, 1 degree at a time.
We heard about that at the top of the show.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, it does seem quite an inefficient way of doing things.
Yeah, but I like the fact that Spock just tells him to shut up and go on with
Yeah,
it.
it's not your job to question it, just do what you're told.
Yeah.
Back in the empty corridor, Kirk gets a pleasant surprise.
Well, he said he's checked the whole ship in his inner monologue, but he obviously hasn't because he's missed the fact there's somebody else on board.
Yeah, he was telling lies. We saw him. He only checked about 2 rooms.
Yeah.
And that ship's massive.
Yeah, I looked in 2 rooms, there's nobody there, there can't be anyone anywhere. And he bumps into this young woman.
Yes, a hot blonde, obviously, for him.
As always.
Prancing about and going by the name of O'Donna.
Yes. She asks why he's brought her here, and he explains that he's the captain, but the ship seems to just be populated by the 2 of them. He doesn't really answer her question. Oh no, he does eventually. He grabs her by the arm and then releases her when she complains about the fact he's hurting her.
This is the first of a few times in this episode where he manhandles her.
Yeah, for no reason.
No. And in fact, the last time, I think he's trying to be intimate with her, or...
He's just, quite violent with it.
Yeah.
Because of his underlying irritation at what's going on. He introduces himself and does say at this point that he didn't bring her here, and she asks who did.
He doesn't know. She doesn't know. He asks her what happened before she got there. And I think looking quite frightened, she tells him that she was standing, all she can remember is standing in a large auditorium with thousands of people crushed up against her as she screamed to get out.
Yeah, she gets a bit upset and Kirk tells her not to be afraid, and she claims that she isn't.
Here's the thing, when we realise what actually is the situation, why is she giving partial memories here?
Yeah, she's just trying to con him into falling for her. But then
it's so close to the truth, she could come up with an entirely...
Yeah, at one point I think it said that she's trying to make him feel the pain of Gideon. But by doing it in a giant empty space, it doesn't make any sense.
No. He tries to soothe her, but she says that while she is not afraid, he is obviously troubled, and he admits that he seems to be the only one of a crew of 430 left.
Yeah, he then encourages her to think harder about where she last remembers being, but she doesn't have much to give him.
No, suddenly she was on the Enterprise, where she has been enjoying the feeling of freedom.
She doesn't think she's been on board all that long, which Kirk thinks may be important.
He then offers his hand and asks her to come with him. And we, meanwhile, head back to the real bridge,
where Uhura reports that there's been no reply from Starfleet, but somehow also have reported that the matter must be referred to the Federation Bureau of Planetary Treaties.
Yeah, I think it's a specific department within that. So Spock tells Uhura to go directly to them. However, she advises that this has already been done, and they have told her she must go through Starfleet.
So she's been sent in circles.
Yes. Spock then ponders this and walks over to a unhappy Sulu to tell him that diplomats and bureaucrats may function differently but achieve the same result. See, he's very sort of philosophical about the whole thing this week.
Yeah, he's not very impressed, I don't think.
No.
Back on the empty bridge, Kirk checks the ship's chronometer on the helm and realises he's lost 9 minutes of his life.
And wants to know what happened during that time, where he tried to beam down to Gideon.
He asks O'Donna about Gideon, but she claims not to recognise the term.
Yeah, I think he assumed this was her home planet.
She doesn't think so.
So he puts on the viewing screen and is a bit perturbed to find that they are no longer orbiting Gideon, and he doesn't know where they are.
Yeah, he thinks they might have been placed in this situation artificially by somebody. He's got experience of that.
Yeah, I think it was at that point that he grabbed her again.
Yep, quite forcefully.
She now admits to being afraid. Yeah, no wonder he's grabbing her all the time.
Yeah, she'd be terrified. There's only 2 of us here. He's a violent maniac.
And it looks like Kirk has too. You can tell that he's not quite as cocksure as he normally is.
No, absolutely
not. When he's not got his buddies around him.
Yeah.
Or a phaser.
Back him up, yeah. Over on the real bridge, Hoden calls up from the planet with fantastic news.
What's this?
They've done a thorough search and Kirk is definitely not on Gideon.
So that's it. Forget all about it. They have complied exactly with the request, word for word.
Spock says that's not what they were wanting, but we then get into a long and boring debate about specificity.
Yeah, it's all about semantics and...
Yeah, I didn't even take notes on it because it was so dull.
Yeah, I think at one point the ambassador is quite irked by Spock's request, and he advises that the language of diplomacy should be crystal clear And even though he's a scientist, he should make greater effort in choosing his words in the future.
Yeah, Scotty and McCoy are unhappy about all this and warn Spock that no matter what he says, it'll be twisted. Uhura says that this guy's infuriating.
Yeah, however, Spock does keep his cool, and he summarises what he wants, and that is to transport down for a search himself.
Yes. He does this after McCoy tries to address Hoden directly, leading to Hoden pretending he doesn't know what's going on and starts shouting for Spock.
Yes.
Hoden at this point notes that the transporter sent Kirk somewhere unexpected and it would cause a serious incident with the Federation if somebody else was lost.
I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, absolutely. He's clearly thought this through in advance.
Yeah.
This enrages Scotty, who leaps to the defence of his machinery.
Scotty's an annoyance.
He is irritating, isn't he?
Yeah.
Spock agrees with us and sends Scotty away to the transporter room, and he heads out chuntering under his breath.
Spock again composes himself and explains to the Gideons that the transporter has been repaired and he would like permission to test it by beaming down to their chamber. That's not
he's
a
lying
good...
to them.
He is, and also it's not an attractive offer, is it? That thing that went wrong the last time, yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'd like to test it on you.
Yeah, but he does get quite insistent, so Hoden agrees on one proviso.
What's that?
Which makes no sense. They're going to beam somebody up first. That's not going to help anything.
It won't help anything, and also you are risking your own men.
Yeah, it doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't prove anything. But anyway, Spock says, yeah, that's fine, and contacts Scotty, and we get new coordinates, again read out in duplicate, so that we can hear they're different from the ones they had before.
Uh-huh. And a big chap called, is it Krodak?
Krodak, yes.
His ancestors were inventors of film for cameras, no?
I was thinking of the Shiraz adversary, but that's Hordak.
Okay.
Spock confirms to Hoden at this point that the man is aboard and that he can now beam down, but Hoden immediately backtracks in the agreement, saying he overstepped his authority when he agreed to all that, and that they will take up the request at the next council session. Then he hangs up.
He does. So he's not... I mean, what's he done with his own man?
He gets beamed back down now. Spock tells Scotty to do that.
But Hoden wouldn't have known that's what he would have done.
Yeah.
So Krodak should have been raging. You sent me up there. They might have just held me prisoner.
Yeah.
Or killed me.
But he gets beamed back down.
Yeah.
And McCoy mocks Spock's diplomacy and is told not to give up just yet.
And then Uhura is told to get on to Starfleet Command urgently.
Meanwhile, in a parallel
bridge,
Kirk is trying to contact Starfleet himself, also with no joy.
Which again frightens O'Donnell. He decides to take the ship out of warp speed until he can work out where they are, and after he does this, she remarks that it feels just the same.
Yes.
I think this sets a little marble rolling in Kirk's mind.
It does.
What does he do then?
He starts to get a bit curious about it, and then she tries to change the subject.
So he puts on the viewing screen and she asks if things have slowed down. He responds by saying yes, if they can believe what they see.
Well, so he's starting to ask questions now, isn't he?
And she seems quite in awe of space and its beauty. And at this, Kirk thinks it's an appropriate time to make a move on her.
Yes. Yes, it is. Very, very beautiful.
And we're alone. Can you make it last a long, long time?
How long would you like it to last?
Forever.
Well, let's see. Power, that's no problem. It regenerates. And food, we have enough to feed a crew of 430 for 5 years. So that should last us...
Forever. All my life I've dreamed of being alone.
Most people are afraid of being alone.
Where I come from, people dream of it.
Why? Why are the people of Gideon like that?
Gideon? I told you I don't know where I come from, what my planet is.
It might be Gideon.
Does it matter so much?
Yes. It might help me pinpoint our location.
And then you might find your crew. Being here with you, I forgot there must be others. I envy you your sense of loyalty. I want to ease your feeling of dread, your fear that all your crew no longer exists.
Again, Kirk thinks that, he sees every woman, no matter if they're a diplomat or a vulnerable potential victim of some incident, that he always just thinks, I'm going to fire into them.
I think he sees that as a way of controlling them.
Possibly, yeah.
So once he's done that, he'll have an element of power.
Yeah.
I don't know. O'Donnell goes on after this point to explain that there are so many people where she's from that you cannot be alone. There's no street, home, beach or mountain that isn't full. That sounds a bit silly, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Like all the ways out the mountains, it's like, oh, I'm just going to go and sit halfway up this mountain.
Yeah, it's so crowded that people would kill to be on their own. He asks her again who sent her, but she insists that no one commands her and no one sent her.
Yeah, and then he asks her, I didn't understand this, whether she's come to kill or die.
Yeah, where is this coming from? She's in no way been violent or...
I don't get it.
I mean, I think maybe it's just because she said that her people would kill, but yeah, it does seem as if there's just something in the script that's missing.
I don't get it. She says that she's just here, she's happy. They kiss and we see, in a brilliantly creepy effect, about 25 folk watching them from behind this view screen.
What's your thoughts on Kirk again, obviously taking advantage of someone who's quite vulnerable?
Yeah, it's inappropriate.
Yeah.
But then, if he suspects that she's behind all this, you can understand why he might want to
if she
adjust the power balance.
Perhaps, but if he suspects,
as
opposed to knows,
his job is to get back to where he's meant to be and get his people.
And the only way to do that is to
be in control
by pumping all the young women.
I mean, that just has to be done. It's a pitfall of the job. He takes her out to the corner at this point where he tells her he needs a medical kit to fix his arm. She
asks with a worrying excitement if he will die. She's almost like, at this point you can tell.
Yeah, he says he won't, but...
It's like a David Cronenberg episode, like Crash or something where people get turned on by injuries and death. And
I've mentioned before that he's in Star Trek now.
Who is?
Cronenberg.
Is he?
As an actor.
I can't remember that.
I'm sure we discussed this. He's in one of the current series.
Right. Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah. Anyhow, she asks if he's going to die with this injury. He says he won't die, it'll just get better by itself, and he can't really remember how it happened.
He then detects a thumping noise coming from somewhere, which O'Donnell says sounds like an engine, but Kirk corrects her.
Yeah, because his ship doesn't make this noise.
No, he knows every noise it makes.
Yeah, so they head to the observation deck where he uses a manual override to open a viewing port, and they see all these green faces which are quickly then replaced by Starscape, and rather than realising what's going on, Kirk goes off on some sort of crazy chain of thought that suggests they're being manipulated with images placed in their heads.
Yeah, no, I think at first he suggests a mirage, but two people can't have the same mirage.
Why would you assume it's a mirage and not that you're not on the Enterprise and you're being watched?
Yeah.
Anyway, O'Donnell has no ideas, but Kirk is convinced something is being done to prevent them leaving their present location.
Yeah, and to keep them content, he says.
Well, she urges him to be content, which irritates him. And he says he'll never be content without his crew, and he asks her if she killed them.
Yeah. But she again denies any knowledge, obviously.
Of course. And then we see them being watched on screen by the Gideon counsellors who see O'Donnell tell Kirk that something is happening to her.
Yeah, she's breaking into a bit of a sweat.
A bit like I am at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I might have this vegan meningitis.
You've got something. You are not looking too great there, Ian. And it's not very warm in here, I'll be honest. I'm actually feeling a little bit chilly. The sweat is pissing out of you.
If next week is a solo episode, folk will realise that something terrible has happened.
Don't worry, it'll be dedicated to you.
In my memory.
Yes.
Anyway, it's quite an amusing moment, I thought, because she's seriously ill at this point and she says she's never felt this way before, and Kirk agrees that he's never felt this way. There's nothing wrong with him. He's just like trying to play along. He thinks she's falling for him.
Yeah. I'm actually a little bit I'm wondering, is this contagious?
What I've got?
Yes.
Or what she's got?
No, I'm getting a little bit nervous now.
Well, we'll find out next week if there's nobody on the show. At least we're not facing one another from 2 feet apart.
No, not quite. Okay. We should have got those plexiglass things up.
That would affect the sound.
Yeah.
And she asks Kirk if she's dying, and he says, there's no sickness here. And she says, oh, there will be, which is a little bit weird. So she passes out in his arms, and at this, Hodin and others come out of the council chambers, and it turns out there's a door right to where they're standing.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's Hodin and the council members or if it's his security team.
It could be. And we see outside this window a mass of people struggling to move.
Yeah. Now, he mentions that the first part of their experiment is over as he takes his daughter from him.
Yeah, well, this is the revelation that he is the father of O'Donnell.
Yes.
Kirk wants to help, but Hodin tells him they don't need any medicine, and he tells the guards to watch Kirk as they're going to need him for a long time.
I think also he thanks him for the illness.
Yeah, it's a bit odd. Up on the Enterprise bridge, Starfleet are refusing still to approve Spock's request, and we've got a Badmiral. You always get Badmirals
Yes.
in this show. You never see an Admiral without him causing trouble.
Okay. Yeah, they don't accept, or he doesn't accept, that Kirk has been kidnapped, and he doesn't want a war. And in any case...
I think he does concede that Kirk's been kidnapped.
Does he? Yes.
He says, we'll take that as fact.
But is he not saying, okay, taking that as fact, even if you
accept he's been kidnapped, there's no proof that his life is at risk. It's like, well, they've kidnapped him. I mean, surely that's some kind of... Anyway. Spock says the decision is arbitrary, and the Admiral says noted and hangs up. Back down on Gideon.
Yeah, Adonna is lying in bed with her father Hodin tending to her in what might be her final moments.
Will it last long?
It depends on the strength of the one infected. You have great strength.
How will you know when I am to die?
Your body temperature will be very great. You will see us, but you will not know who we are.
I must see him before then,
No, lie still. You feel great pain?
Yes. In my arms and thighs.
What is it like to feel pain?
It is like when you see the people have no hope for happiness, Father. You feel great despair, and your heart is heavy because you know you can do nothing. Pain is like that.
Your courage gives me great pride.
I'm not sure I'm on board with her description of pain.
No, it's not how I would go about it.
No.
When he asked, she should have just given him a slap in the old meeting to a veg.
Yeah, it's like this.
How's like that?
Out in the corridor, Kirk asks to see O'Donnell, but Hodin, who's now emerged, says there's no need. He knows that she has vegan something. She's a vegan now.
Vegan meningitis.
Choriomeningitis.
Yeah.
And Kirk's like, oh my goodness, I used to have that.
Yeah, it's almost fatal if not treated within 24 hours.
It almost killed him.
Yeah. When?
In the past.
No, I can't remember. Was it an episode we saw?
No, it's probably before that.
Right, maybe when he was a kid.
Never mentioned again, yeah.
Hodin admits that he knows this as their Prime Minister learned about him during their negotiations, and that is why they brought him there. Yes,
to harvest his blood and to create this illness in their own community.
Yeah, basically they wanted to infect her. Now, yeah, it was probably a case of, we know what you do. We know your lifestyle. We need someone to infect my daughter by having sex with her. Yep, you're the man.
No, they extracted his blood, and he apologises at this point because they have no doctors, so they've done it in a very crude way and wrecked his arm.
Right, fair enough. I thought it was because of he goes about there. Apparently that's how HIV started, wasn't it? Some guy pumped a monkey.
I don't know if that's true.
Well, it might not be true, but it's a rumour, right? So he's going about the galaxy doing all sorts with aliens, unprotected with all these aliens. Who knows what sort of viruses and diseases that he's creating and spreading?
Well, McCoy tests them every now and then.
Yeah, but you can only test for something that you know about.
Yeah, maybe.
We need someone to kill my daughter. He's riddled.
Yeah, well, that's the guy to go for. Kirk tells Holden at this point that they're all mad, and Holden says, no, we're desperate. So Kirk tries to break free, but he gets subdued by the two guards quite easily. Probably because he's got a sore arm.
Yeah.
Back on the Enterprise bridge, McCoy can't believe it, but Spock says Starfleet don't care what he believes.
However, fortunately, Spock decides to go rogue and disobey the order. And he tells Uhura and Scotty to repeat the original beam down coordinates.
Yeah, find out that these are different from the ones that were given for Hordak later on, no, Krodak.
Yep, and he's determined to beam down, but denies McCoy the opportunity to join him, stating that it won't take long.
This is what Kirk said just before he left as well. McCoy had earlier noted that Spock was making a great decision, but now reverses his view.
Indeed. Back to the alternative transporter room.
Yeah, we skip ahead and see Spock materialise now and try to contact Kirk without success.
And so he walks into the corridor, taking readings on his tricorder.
Meanwhile, in the council chamber, Kirk is laying into Holden, noting that he lied to the Federation about Gideon's paradise status.
And I liked the camera angle here that was shot up through the glass table.
Yes, we saw a few different individuals shot through the bottom of the table. It was good.
Mm-hmm. Holden, however, defends their position, claiming that Gideon used to be a paradise, so much so that death became almost unknown to them, and this caused overpopulation and their current plight.
Kirk, in a shocking twist that the censors must have missed, suggests sterilisation or contraception.
Yes, so I thought this was fairly progressive. I thought this should be commended.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much this is spoken about in terms of Star Trek's attitudes. We had the interracial kiss that was is often discussed and mentioned. Is this something that is brought up?
Oh, not that I'm aware of. I think folk would suggest it's surprising that he was allowed to say this on the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he actually says that if you want to reduce the population, the Federation can give you condoms and other sorts of sterilisation.
Board games to distract you.
Yeah.
Holden says that the organs they have would regenerate, and then he goes on a pro-life spiel saying that everything from a fetus and upwards is precious to them and could never be destroyed willingly.
Yeah, it's all sacred to them, and I thought that this was, I suppose, a nice, maybe not dig, but we've seen how over the years religion has caused many problems with their stances in terms of birth control.
Yeah.
Around the world. So this was
sure. It reminded me of I think it's the Monty Python song, "Every Sperm is Sacred."
Yes, that's the meaning of life, is it?
I think it might be, or certainly maybe from the show. But in any event, the idea that there's some sort of issue here. So he's saying they can't use contraceptives because they value all life from fetus onwards, but there's no fetus at that point.
No, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, it's although in many religions, the act of creating a sperm on one's own was prohibited or frowned upon.
You don't want to waste any of them. They could be people.
They could be potentially, yes.
They could be guests at a wedding in the future.
Yeah, we won't go any further than that. I mean, I think it'd be far too easy and lazy for us to make any jokes or comment on that whole malarkey.
Oh, okay.
So I've
got a whole lot written down.
Let's just crack off. In any case, this enrages Kirk, who points out that he's willing to kill his own daughter.
My daughter hoped to make you feel the agony of Gideon, but it was impossible. No stranger could realize the horror that life can be here. I will not beg for your understanding of my personal grief, nor will I parade it for you to gain your cooperation. My love for my daughter is too deep for display. My pride in her runs even deeper. My daughter freely chose to do what she is doing, as the people of Gideon are free to choose.
The virus you need is very rare. Who will provide it?
You will stay. Your blood will provide it.
Oh, no, sir, not me. You have many methods available to you. I've mentioned only a few. I do not offer my life for this purpose. I have many plans. And I have hopes other than death for O'Donnell.
My daughter pleaded with you to stay.
What was said and what happened between us was for us alone.
She hoped you would love her and wish to stay.
So that was your plan? That I would fall so under her spell that I would give up my freedom and become a willing sacrifice?
Stay with us. We're desperate.
This plan makes no sense.
It doesn't. Can you explain to me exactly what they think? 'Cause
They
I'm
think
confused.
they're going to basically keep Kirk in a fridge,
Right.
and every time someone wants to die, they get this serum made from Kirk's blood to infect them. Then they die. They're put in whatever bin.
But surely they can just take his blood from him just now and then infect some other people and then take the blood from these other people.
They need an unlimited supply because
But they will have that. It's not going to be efficient for Kirk to physically deal with every person. What you need to do is you need to take one and infect more.
That's
and
not
then
their plan.
they're idiots.
Their plan is just to keep Kirk and use him a billion times.
I don't understand anyway how they need to be infected. If they want to die, they're not immortal. If they
No,
want-
but their organs regenerate, so there's certain
it's not
only
if
certain
they,
illnesses
if
will
they
kill
chop
them.
their head off, it won't regenerate.
Well, there's actually an episode of Next Generation that deals with this. People, once they get to a certain age and one planet, they have to show up for disintegration.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy tries not to do it, and they chase him down to disintegrate him.
Yeah, sounds interesting. But a better plan than this.
Yeah.
Anyway, at this point, as we heard, communications comes through informing them that O'Donnell's fever is rising and she is calling on Kirk. Obviously, that's who she would call on, not her father.
Yeah, no, she's
the guy
not,
she's
the guy met today.
Yeah.
So Holden sends him through to her, and we then switch to Spock elsewhere on this construction using his communicator to tell Scotty about the replica Enterprise. We get McCoy acting very stupid.
In what way?
He asks a stupid question. He says, "Is it in orbit?" Like they wouldn't have seen it in orbit. And Spock, realising immediately how stupid the question is, mocks him by saying, "Well, it's on Gideon, which technically is orbiting the star, so yeah." McCoy doesn't pick up on the fact he's being mocked,
No.
and continues to say, "Oh, that's good." And it asks about Kirk. So Spock, who is picking up life signs, says he can tell that Kirk's nearby, but excuse me, I need to go do a log.
Yeah, we then have an alternative Spock log, 5423.8.
He says they've set this up to confuse his mind so they can make him susceptible to an extraordinary experiment.
Which will conclude with Kirk dying. This is a massive leap. He's getting
No, not dying. The end of his life as he knows it.
Right, okay, but where's he getting this from?
Oh, he just made this up.
He sees a replica bridge and they think they've created it just to confuse Kirk.
And end his life as he knows it.
There's no evidence of that at all.
He's decided.
Okay. Alternative quarters. Kirk is with the dying O'Donnell and Holden, who he warns that if McCoy is not brought down shortly, it's going to be too late for his daughter.
Yes, Holden reiterates that they don't want her to be saved, and Kirk says that her death is unnecessary, and if she lives, her blood can provide the serum that they were taking from him.
Well, that's my point, yes. You can spread this about.
Yeah, Holden, though, believes that her death will inspire young volunteers to come forward to die themselves. This makes no sense. First of all, why young people? Is this so they can skip a generation of childbirth?
Exactly. If you're overpopulated, get rid of the old ones first if you've had a chance.
Although, but what I'm thinking here is this could take out 2 generations at once. You take out this generation and the generation that they would give birth to.
Start slowly. Go with the old folk first. Come on.
But then you've got no young people, so you're waiting now for your children to grow up. Who knows? Why don't just kill the children? That'd be good.
Ooh. That's not the first time I've ever heard you say that.
Well, this time I'm talking about Star Trek.
Okay. Where were we?
O'Donnell's gone through. Kirk's gone through, to see O'Donnell, and she's glad that he's there. And he says he can cure her. And she says she's not afraid, but she wants to stay with him forever, and then passes out.
Yeah. I mean, effectively, she's going to become a martyr.
Yeah, she's signed up for this because she's been persuaded this is the only thing to be done.
Before she does pass out, this is the bit where he grabs her head and lifts it up.
Yeah.
It's like a
really
dying person. Yeah, you don't touch them. I mean, of all the times you need to be gentle with someone, it's when they're moments away from death.
It's quite theatrical.
Very.
Outside the room, we see Spock sneak up on and take out 2 guards.
This was ridiculous. The first one, fine, he pinches him. The other one, he just grabs and throws a little bit.
Yeah, how do you know he's even knocked out?
Yeah, he shouldn't be knocked out.
That's crazy. Anyhow, he goes in and he politely greets both Holden and Kirk.
I think he's putting on an air of confidence, like he should be there, because he's obviously gone rogue here. He doesn't have the authority to do what he's doing.
Yeah. Kirk has him contact Scotty to beam 3 up from the current location. We get more spiel about coordinates and stuff. And then Spock urges Holden not to interfere, as he already has one problem to sort out with his boss.
Yes, I quite like that.
And then the 3 of them beam up, including O'Donnell.
We next see them in sickbay, where McCoy leaves the now cured Kirk and O'Donnell alone. So, all dealt with.
Yeah, there was nothing wrong with Kirk.
Well, he does sore arm.
Yeah. O'Donnell asks Kirk why he's not angry with her, and he says something really creepy.
What's that?
That she owes him the privilege of looking at her.
Yeah, forever, with my binoculars. Whenever I want to, I can look at you, can't I? Yeah.
She's completely misunderstood and calls him a gentleman.
Yes, he's like, okay, fine. So, just for the record, you're giving me permission to spy on you.
Yes. She says she can now take his place on Gideon, as she's now needed there, and he then says she's needed everywhere, which makes no sense.
Every planet needs a woman like Adonna.
And they go out to the corridor where she notes that the real Enterprise seems different. And Kirk says, nope, just the same.
Yeah, but although it's a little bit more crowded, and she says, oh, you call this crowded, do you?
Oh, you should see our planet. There's folk up the side of every mountain.
Yeah.
Queues to get to the top. She wishes he could come to Gideon, but he just grins at her inanely, and then, without saying anything, orders her to be beamed down.
There you go. No, I'm not coming back with you.
Don't be so stupid. They smile at one another as she says she'll miss him, and that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, it's not the most coherent, not the most logical of episodes. It doesn't make much sense at all, to be fair.
My favourite bit was the fact that on this planet that's so overpopulated, there's people up the sides of all the mountains. They found the space and time to build a giant replica of the Enterprise, full size.
Yeah, how did they do that? I was assuming it was some sort of magic
through their negotiations.
Sort of powers that they had.
No, I think they just, during their negotiations, they've got hold of the diagrams and they've built this replica.
Well, I suppose you've got the manpower.
Yeah.
It's like the Egyptians with the pyramids.
I think it takes a lot of people, yeah. I don't think there was any chance that would ever persuade Kirk to do what they wanted.
No.
It was a stupid plan.
Or even return once everyone sort of calmed down a bit.
Yeah. Also, I don't understand why they think the death of one person would inspire a generation to follow.
No, because we don't actually... She's never given that position. She's not their ruler, their queen. She's just the daughter of a council member.
Yeah.
You'd have to have built her up to be more than that. Someone who the entire population, looks up to.
Yeah. What do you think happens next then in Gideon after we leave them?
They'll start. I don't know. Maybe they're like, you know what? It's crowded, but I'd rather that than die. I'm not going to die.
According to the book Worlds of the Federation, they end up, I think, about 12 billion folk die.
Okay.
Takes them down.
Because what she said, you need to remember, is that she said that it's so overcrowded that people would kill. None of they could kill themselves, but that's not what she means.
If people would kill, that suggests that somebody has killed at some point. Yeah. So if murder exists, then what's the problem?
Yeah.
Just get folk to volunteer for disintegration like they do in that other episode.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's my point. They're quite happy to kill, but they don't want to kill themselves, so this won't work. It's like,
exactly. So this entire generation are going to put the life of the planet and all these old people ahead of their own lives.
No.
They've all got plans.
Exactly.
Stuff to watch on telly.
Mm.
Anyhow.
Podcast to listen to.
That's it. You want some trivia?
Have you got any?
Not much.
Give us what you've got.
So originally aired on the 17th of January 1969, directed by Judd Taylor, who did last week's episode. This was actually the fourth of his 5. You can hear more about him in the podcast for the Paradise Syndrome. Written by George Slavin and Stanley Adams. Adams will be more familiar to Star Trek audiences for his role as Cyrano Jones in The Trouble with Tribbles.
Now that was another episode which had overpopulation as a theme.
Yeah, it did, of Tribbles.
Mm-hmm.
This was his only writing credit for the show, and we discussed him more in the podcast for that episode. This is Slavin's only Star Trek episode. He was a pilot in World War II and began his screenwriting career almost immediately after the end of that conflict, contributing to series like Dr. Kildare, Mission Impossible, and Alfred Hitchcock Presents, for which he won a Writers Guild Award, as well as penning a number of minor feature films. And he died in 2001 when he was 85. Sharon Acker played O'Donnell. She was meant to be the great Canadian breakout star of her generation, but that didn't really happen for her.
She reminded me a little bit of Margot Robbie, like an old-fashioned version.
This was her only Star Trek appearance, and she also had roles in shows like Mission Impossible, Barnaby Jones, and The Incredible Hulk before her screen career ended in the early 90s, and she's now 86 years old. David Hurst played Hoden, perhaps best known for his roles in Hello Dolly and Kelly's Heroes. This was his only Star Trek role. Born in Germany, he travelled from Europe on the Kindertransport during World War II, although not as a child, and he served with the Irish Fusiliers in that conflict before commencing his acting career. He appeared in shows like Mission Impossible and Serpico, and he returned to his native Berlin prior to his death in 2019 when he was 93. Gene Dynarski played Krodak. This was the second of his two Star Trek appearances. Yeah, you can hear more about him, obviously, in the podcast for
Murds at Women.
Yes. Richard Dare played Admiral Fitzgerald. This was also his second of two appearances. There's more about him on the podcast for The Alternative Factor, which I can understand if nobody wants to go back to ever again. Okay, I've already mentioned it was notable that Kirk was allowed to address the issues of birth control and sterilisation without the censors getting involved. Stanley Adams, we talked about him, played Cyrano Jones in Trouble with Tribbles. He was actually personally deeply concerned about overpopulation in the 60s when there was about 3 billion fewer people.
What was his problem?
I don't know. He and his son were campaigners on that topic.
Okay.
And they didn't like the final version of the episode either.
Right.
Father and daughter in this episode were only 9 years apart in age. 34-year-old Sharon Acker. David Hurst, who played her father, was 43.
Get out, honestly. We need to do a podcast on old-timey people who were younger and looked an awful lot older, whether it be sports people or
film stars.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. He's not 43.
Yeah, he was 43.
God.
Looking well for it. He lived till he was in his 90s, so he was obviously doing okay. He reminds me actually of an 80-year-old Tom Jones.
Yeah, maybe. I'm hoping that a lot of these people were actually just lying. You know, they get the wrong because of the industry they're in. They say that they're...
He's actually 53.
He's actually 53, yeah. I mean, a lot of the time they did do that.
Yeah, maybe.
People did knock a few years off their birth certificate.
In terms of international titles, in Japan the episode was called Shouju Wakuse Gideon no Kuno, which means Anguish of Gideon, the Planet of Longevity.
Okay.
And I think the Italians might have been watching the wrong episode when they made their title, which was Un Vampiro a Bordo, which translates as A Vampire Aboard.
Vampire?
Because they're taking Kirk's blood.
Taking his life, yeah. Blood, yeah.
It's a bit of a stretch.
It's a bit of a stretch, yeah. It's not a...
Next week, 17th episode of Season 3, That Which Survives, with the return of everybody's favourite Vulcan specialist medic.
McCoy?
No, the other one.
Alright, okay.
In the meantime, you find us all over social media. We're at Trek Podcast. We're on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. You can find all the episodes on our YouTube channel and on our website, StarTrekPodcast.com, and you can leave your comments, reviews, thoughts, anything else you want to do there.
So until next week when you'll be feeling better, hopefully.
Well, I'm already feeling better.
There we go. It's a hot flush.
Yeah, something like that. Probably menopause.
Well, yeah, man.
These days. Okay, cheerio.
Bye-bye.